So, before I get started, and I know this might be kind of redundant, I'm going to be talking about a lot of spoilers, which are really, really huge because BioShock is an amazingly written game. And yeah, I was wondering if anyone would get that joke, by the way. But I'm pretty sure everyone here has played BioShock. Yeah? Has anyone here not played it? Okay, so fully? No?
No,
Okay, then.
it's all right.
So, are you interested in it though? Because I really don't want to ruin this for you.
I'm not. It's not going to kill the.
All right, if you insist, I just wanted to point that out just in case there was anyone here who hasn't played it yet. Because, again, very well written, and I would hate to ruin this game for anyone. So anyway, to start off, what is incentive? Incentive, very simply, is giving someone, or well, it is a reason to do something. And the example I have up here with my clip art pictures are an example of incentive would be your paycheck when you go to work. When you go to work, you do it because you want to get paid. You're doing it for your paycheck. If you weren't receiving that, then there's no reason for you to come into work. Now, the thing about incentive is that it is very active in game design. When you're making a game, you always want a reason for your players to want to play your game. Now, there are hundreds of different ways you can go about doing this. Some of the generalized examples I have, again with clip art up here, is there could be some sort of in-game award that you can have your players work towards for making some sort of achievement in your game. If it's an online game you're making, there could be some sort of title you can bestow upon another player. So they could be like, hey, check out how cool I am. Maybe it's not even that complex. It could be something as simple as just wanting to kill time, right? Maybe you're in the doctor's office and you have to wait an hour, so you pull out your 3DS and play Pokemon or something like that. So I could continue and list off all sorts of different examples of incentive reasons people would want to play games. But what I feel that every incentive for gaming boils down to is the player wants to either have fun or feel satisfaction in some sort of way, which kind of makes a lot of sense if you think about it. I mean, for whatever reason you could list for wanting to play a game, whether you're casual or professional or whatever, it's all about one of these two things. These aren't the two I'm going to be talking about in relation to BioShock. There's three main incentives that I wanted to talk about, which I feel BioShock does really well. And the first is the incentive of plot. Now, BioShock, as everyone knows, has a very engaging story, right? Right from the beginning, it really grabs your attention and makes you want to progress and find out what happens next. The second incentive is the incentive of mystery, kind of going in hand with plot. Now, BioShock is a very, very mysterious game in that it sends you in a absolute crazy world and asks so many questions and is very short on giving you answers, which sort of pushes the player to want to find out more about their surroundings. I forgot what I was going to explain. For those of you who don't know, which I'm pretty sure there's no one here who doesn't, but for the recording, BioShock takes place in this city called Rapture. And Rapture is located in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, exactly, well, not exactly, but approximately around that location, in between Greenland and Iceland. And, you know, right off the bat, it's absolutely nuts, because the game takes place in 1960. So how on earth did they build this city underneath the Atlantic Ocean? It immediately sets off that incentive and gains the player's interest in wanting to find out more about it. And the third incentive I want to talk about, which again sort of ties in with the first two, is incentive and emotion. Now, BioShock is a very emotional game. It makes you feel all sorts of things at once, and again, really sort of gets you wanting to find out more, which ties again with the first two. And I'll go into detail a little bit more about that in a bit. But everyone here has played BioShock. You guys know the plots, but I'm not going to, well, except fully, obviously. But there are three, I could probably recite the whole game from memory, but there are three main characters that I just wanted to focus in on that really the plot sort of revolves around. Now, the first character you meet is this guy named Atlas, right? Now, you never see Atlas in person, at least not initially. And right off the bat, he's an extremely mysterious individual. You find out almost nothing about him throughout the entire game. Most of what you find out about Atlas, you actually learn by interacting with the environments. Like, for example, this poster up here is one that you see spread out across different levels. And you sort of are able to piece together that Atlas is kind of acknowledged in the city of Rapture. And, you sort of develop attachment to that because Rapture, as you all know, is completely an absolute hellhole run by druggy super mutants. And, it's sort of nice to see like a hero stand up among them. Another thing is that, tying in with the incentive of emotion, when you first meet Atlas, he explains that his family is trapped in Rapture and was cut off by splicers. And he asks you, the one person who was unlucky enough to wander into the city, to help him. And while that's kind of mysterious that this absolute stranger is just calling you out of the blue and making you want to rescue his family, you still sort of feel an emotional incentive towards him because, for starters, he's the first person who doesn't try to kill you in this game. So that right there is kind of a big deal, right? So everyone has tried to... Everything all right?
Yep, just making sure.
Right. Everyone in this game has tried murdering you, like, first thing you come in, and this is the first guy who's just like, hey, I need you to help me, let's maybe help each other out. So you build sort of an attachment towards that. And later on in the story, he actually starts to develop an attachment towards you and sort of cares about your own well-being as well as his family's. And it's like, oh, well, if this guy is trusting me to save his family, that sort of really pushes me to want to help Atlas, which, again, building on that emotional incentive. You want to help him because he's this one guy in this madhouse who cares about you. So it's like, all right, I want to help him and get everyone out of here and have a huge happy ending, right?
Is Atlas Booker
In
a different lighthouse?
The second character we talk to a lot is this woman named Bridget Tenenbaum. And again, she's not someone you interact with in person a lot. A lot of her dialogue is usually from the one-way radio you have that you communicate with the other NPCs with. Now, one of the first things you learn about Bridget Tenenbaum is that she was actually responsible for the creation of Little Sisters and Big Daddies, which Little Sisters are these horrifying, mutated girls who extract this genetic material called Adam from dead bodies, and Big Daddies are these giant iron behemoths that guard them. So very grotesque, very grim, and the fact that she experimented on like innocent men and children to create them, it says a lot about her character. But at the same time, Miss Tenenbaum explains that she's very reluctant for her work and wants to make up for it and wants to save the Little Sisters and atone for her sins, which, again, building on that emotional incentive. So when she sends you on a quest and, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. So you start to develop attachment towards her as well. So again, sort of building towards that emotional incentive. You care about this person. You know that she wants to make up for making Rapture this complete hellhole. And, later on you do a mission for her, and, that's sort of the incentive for wanting to, which I'll get to that in a second as well. And, again, she's also the only other character you practically encounter who actually cares about the player. Everyone else is trying to murder you, or, just thinks you're a terrible person or doesn't trust you, or something horrible along that lines. The final character that you interact with most often is Andrew Ryan. And you find out pretty early on that Mr. Ryan is responsible for pretty much all of Rapture and the reason for its downfall in that. And I'll explain that in a minute because I'm going to have someone come up here and play through the first 10 minutes and I'll just explain how incentive works in it. But Andrew Ryan had this philosophy where he believed that successful people shouldn't have to contribute to the rest of society. He believes that if you were successful, you only should have to worry about yourself. You shouldn't have to worry about other people or parasites, as he called them, who demanded like, oh, where's my fair share of your wealth and success? So, kind of a bit of a relatable philosophy, but he's a huge D-bag about it. Like, literally every time you talk to Andrew Ryan, or he talks to you rather, he just goes out of his way to making himself an unlikable character. I mean, he tries to murder you, he belittles you, he's condescending. Just everything about him is completely negative. And he's pretty much responsible for every bad thing that happens in the game. So whenever there's like a huge wave of splicers that come after you, it's usually his doing, or he'll lock you out of certain parts of Rapture, and then you have to go through a whole quest to unlock it. Again, just so much of an unlikable guy. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. Right now, I need a volunteer to come up and play through the first 10 minutes of BioShock.
No, I'm only before.
Foley?
Yeah, Foley.
All right, Foley, come on up here. All right, so let me just pull up, let's see. Oh, I just had it running. There we go. Okay, wow. Okay, that looks a lot better on the projector than it does on the screen. All right, so I'm going to, let's turn the volume up, by the way. I don't know if it's working. New game. Yeah, there's like music that's playing in the background. I don't. Oh.
Yeah, the default volume is really low on the projector.
Okay. Yeah, it just turns down a little bit. I just want to. I'm going to be talking most anyway, so what I'm going to be saying is a lot more important than what's going on in the game. So, Foley, go ahead, take a seat. Oh, crap, you need a mouse. Hold on.
Move the cursor because it makes awesome sounds.
Because who the hell plays first-person shooters on the trackpad, right? This me? Really? Whoa, let's take it down, MLG's.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Never mind, you have to use the keys. Or it's only on Xbox.
Right. That's working out. No, it's not on. All right, please go in easy difficulty and try to take it a little bit slow so I can sort of talk about what's taking place.
Go hard.
Huh?
Go hard.
Well, I don't want him to get his crap kicked out of him by, like, during a presentation. Another time, on your own time, Foley, you can be a complete badass, all right?
Right.
Not now. Now is not the time to be a badass. Now is the time to play it safe.
I think that's the small one.
Okay, so the very first thing that happens in the game is we're introduced to our protagonist, Jack. Now, Jack is a very mysterious character because he never talks about him at all, and in fact,
You're special. You were born to do great things.
Oh.
You know what?
Yeah.
They were right.
that right there is his only spoken dialogue in the entire game, unless you want to count grunts of pain for when he gets shot. So, right off the bat, immediate incentive of mystery. Who is this character, Jack? What was he doing on that plane? What is his deal? Why were we just immediately thrown in here without knowing anything about the very character we're playing as? So, right off the bat, incentive of plot, incentive of mystery. He wants to find out more, pushes the player to find out more, right? So, the plane you were in, for whatever reason, immediately crashes, and you are the only survivor of the plane, right? Completely crazy. You're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. What on earth is possibly going to happen next? Are you dead? Are you just going to get rescued by someone? Are you going to freeze to death out in the frigidly cold water, right? You have no idea what's going to happen. And you float to the surface, look around, the wreckage is everywhere, right? The plane is completely destroyed, and there's no guide for you to go anywhere until you see the lighthouse. Could you turn a little bit to the lighthouse up there, right? So again, very mysterious stuff going on. You see this lighthouse, again, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. What on earth is it doing there? It's like, there's no nearby island, there's no city for you to travel to. The closest country is like freaking 100 miles away. What's it doing all the way out there? Creates more incentive for the player to want to find out more. They want to explore and see what the deal of this game is. You can continue. I'll just wait for you to catch up. If I ask you to stop, then just stop, and I'll slow down and explain more. So again, just throwing millions of different questions in your direction at once. The player wants to find out so much, which I don't really know if that would always be the case because most everyone who's played BioShock has seen the gameplay trailers of it and already knows it takes place in a city underwater. So, you walk into this lighthouse. First thing you see, this guy's ugly mug right here, and you see the banner that says, "No gods or king, only man." Again, just throwing all sorts of crazy, mysterious stuff at you, making you want to find out more. Who is this guy? What does that mean? No gods or king, only man. You could make the assumption that he's someone important, but again, you're not going on a lot. It's just, you're completely interacting with your environment. And as if you haven't had enough crazy stuff thrown at you already, now you see this giant submarine right here. Just get a good image of that. Oh, back up a bit. Right, and again, in the 1960s, this looks like no sort of submarine you've seen before. It's like, well, there's no controls for it. There's only a single switch. I'm pretty sure that submarines are a little bit more complicated than that, right? And there's a service radio. There's like nothing here for you. And so you pull the lever, not knowing what to expect to happen, and immediately just starts pulling you underwater. And in a second, hold on. It takes a while for it to start the show.
Does who writes? Does Ken Levine take a very big part in writing this whole hero's journey out?
Does who?
Ken Levine, if that isn't right? Yeah.
Well, a lot of this is actually going off Anne Ryan's book, Atlas Shrugged, which I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's not entirely relevant. But I'll get to that in a second. So, anyway, you step into this bathysphere, and this guy shows up in this sort of introduction video explaining that he's Andrew Ryan, he's the guy who built Rapture. And as I was explaining before, he has this philosophy that he doesn't like that people who are successful have to contribute to the rest of society. He thinks that someone should only have to look out for themselves if they are successful. And so to avoid society that is like that, he builds one underneath the Atlantic Ocean, right? Completely crazy. This takes place in the 1960s. Where on earth did they get the technology to build a city this deep underwater? Completely blows you away. And again, just throwing so much in your face to give you lots of questions to want to know more about this setting, right? I mean, for one thing, it's completely, like, beautiful as a city. Like, they have working electricity down here. There's, like, fish and whales swimming around. It's really kind of cool. And, it really sort of just completely captivates your attention and imagination. And you want to, again, know more. It's pushing plot and incentive, or, excuse me, it is pushing plot and mystery incentive into your face, making you want to explore more and learn about your surroundings. And to a lesser extent, it kind of gives you an incentive of emotion. Like, maybe you're feeling a little overwhelmed, maybe you're really excited. It pushes you to want to continue through the game. Again, to a lesser extent. So, you see this underwater city. You think to yourself, all right, well, what's it like down here? Is this still a functioning society? Is it completely abandoned? You have, again, no idea what you're getting into. And the first thing that happens when you step into Rapture, gotta wait for it to load. So, the very first thing you witness happen as soon as you step into Rapture is this guy is about to get murdered by this horrible, disfigured mutant who has hooks that she's carrying around. Yeah, he gets his stomach slashed open. Very grim and violent. Just, ugh. So, kind of freaks you out for a second. You certainly weren't expecting this, of all things, to happen, right? And, gotta wait for it to continue. I apologize. But, again, just going back to what I've been saying from the beginning, is completely just throwing a million things at you at once. Like, there's so much happening, you have so many different questions you want answered, and I know I keep repeating myself for that, but, again, that's because it's just one crazy thing after another in this game, right? Like, you just happen to have your plane crash next to this lighthouse, which takes you down to this underwater city that is filled with evidently horrible monsters. You're going to have a lot of questions. And finally, you have satisfaction of meeting someone who isn't completely crazy. I mean, your first experience here is watching a guy get his intestines ripped out. So, obviously you're gonna listen to what he has to say. And I'm sorry I'm talking over him, but the man
so politely.
Yeah, the man identifies himself as Atlas and says that he wants to keep you alive and sort of guides your way through to escape this part of Rapture you're in right now because, obviously you don't want to stick around here. And you can sort of start to make sense of things around your surroundings. Like, you see there are back there were some protest signs saying that, we want to leave Rapture or something like that. So it makes you... Oh, sorry. I thought I was going to say something relevant. So, you can start to piece things together and maybe learn a little bit more about your setting. All right, so you know that people wanted to leave and obviously weren't allowed to if they were trying to protest for it. So, again, just ask you more questions, like why do they want to leave? This seems kind of cool, and it makes you wonder why... there are mutants and everything is destroyed and there are leaks everywhere. It makes you wonder, and that's what pushes the player to want to find out more about the setting of BioShock. So, yeah, right. So, again, just more exposure to complete crazy people. This absolute psychopath just pushed a burning couch down at you. So, a lot of crazy stuff happening at once. See? Immediately, again, just tries to kill you. So... not really getting a very good first impression of BioShock. Rather I should say that you're not getting a good first impression of Rapture, right? I mean, first thing you come in here, you watch a guy get murdered, and then some psychopath pushes a burning couch down here. So then, as if you don't have enough mysteries already, you hear this advertisement about this little girl talking about how her daddy is smarter than Einstein, stronger than Hercules, that can light fire with a snap of his finger, and this sounds pretty crazy. How on earth do we go about doing that? And at this point, you see this syringe with this mysterious fluid in there. And for whatever reason, the protagonist injects himself with it, right? Only more questions being thrown at you. Like, why on earth would his first impression after seeing the syringe be to inject himself with it? That's incredibly stupid. Why would he ever do that? And you don't really have a lot of answers because, as I said before, you don't know anything about Jack at this point, right? His only spoken dialogue was at the opening title, and it was just him talking about how his parents thought he was destined to do something great. So, just throwing so much mystery at you to want to find out more. And at this point, after injecting himself with this fluid, he starts to fade in and out of consciousness, and you start to learn a little bit more about the setting of Rapture. Like, these two guys wanted to steal the genetic material that he just injected himself with from his body. And you hear one of them mention something called a Big Daddy, and, they seem pretty intimidated by it. Like, what's a Big Daddy? What's so bad about that? At which point, you see this giant iron behemoth with a drill for a hand, of all things, stomp over you. And, again, just throwing more mysteries on here, like, what on earth is going on? Why is this creepy little zombie child with a syringe wanting to poke me with it? And why is this giant scary monster following her? Just so many questions being pointed at you. And I know I'm, saying that there are questions being asked, but again, it's just one crazy thing after another. And, to a lesser extent, I think incentive of emotion kind of comes into play because the game, as you find out later on, sort of requires you to kill Big Daddies, but you would be a little intimidated by this because you just saw that giant monster and you're wondering what happened. Oh dear. Okay. Wrong way. Turn around. Go down the stairs. Okay. So, what you're gonna want to do is use your electro bolt right on, here, maybe, yeah, just right, there you go. Oh, why didn't it? Okay, there we go.
Oh, shit.
Alright, so, the tail of the plane that just crashed above the water has now cleaned a hole through one of the tunnels you're trying to get through, which, obviously you want to get out, but you're still being pushed to want to continue. You want to progress and find out more about your settings and the story behind it. So even though, disaster is happening and it's flooding and it's completely freaking you out, it pushes you to want to know more. It gives you that incentive to continue even though you might not want to. So just go ahead. I'll try to guide you through so you don't take too much. Okay, so right-click to switch between plasmid and weapons, and then just left-click to use them, I guess. So.
Where'd that guy go?
Yeah, I have no idea where he went. He spawned randomly. Oh, there he is. Okay, so yeah, just beat him to death. There we go. Okay. He's dead, Foley. He's dead. It's fine. All right. So continue to the next part of the level, if you could. It should be to your right. Oh yeah, see, there's another one. So,
oh god.
Again, really not giving you a good first impression. Every person, or every human rather, you've met in person has tried to murder you, and it makes you wonder, why are they trying to murder you? Why are they horribly disfigured? Why are they completely incoherent and babbling and crazy? It just throws so much at you, and surely enough, there's another one who, even in the process of burning to death, is trying to murder you. Completely crazy stuff happening. Why is everyone trying to kill you? Just so much is being asked. All right, so continue to the next room. Go into the elevator. So finally, you're given your first piece of piece of information that sort of gives a little clarity on the world. And all right, so we sort of get our first reward for wanting to find out a little bit more about the plot. You find out that this guy, Atlas, has a family down here. He obviously isn't crazy. It's okay, you can just murder her. She's not important. There you go. All right, so you find out that Atlas has a family here, and he wants to get them out, and you are the only hope he has of getting them back. So, again, kind of gives him a bit of a pity situation, but at the same time, you have reason to have your suspicions. Like, you just met this guy, and you know nothing about him, and suddenly he wants you to save his family. But at the same time, you can make the assumption that, okay, maybe he's not so bad. I mean, if he's trusting me, just some random guy that I don't even know, to save his family, then, obviously there's some sort of trust towards me. Can you go into the women's restroom over there really quick?
I don't want
What? Just do it, you pussy.
Wait.
All right. So, again, just one crazy thing after another. Now you're hallucinating ghosts, right? Now, even though you don't really know why this is happening, you still are able to find out a little bit more. Because the ghosts it's almost like a recollection, like a memory of something that happened before Rapture completely went to hell. And by communicating, or, well, not really communicating, but by listening to the ghosts, you learn more about them. And another thing, can you turn around really quick? Just go back in there. All right, just go, down, left. Oh goodness, no, not in the toilets, just right in there. And another thing that sort of gives the player incentive to collect are these things called audio messages. And what these are basically diaries of citizens of Rapture, and they sort of explain what life was like down there. And, it gives you reason to collect more because you want to find out more about the history of this place. Now, me personally, I'm not really a big fan of the whole found diary way of explaining a setting because, honestly, I think that's a little lazy and there are a lot more creative ways to explain a setting to a player rather than just happening to find a diary by someone. Because
Look at the men's bathroom.
It's a similar art style. There's like a universal consistency of sort of 1950s art that you sort of see like in video games and in real life, but no, it's not supposed to be the Vault Boy, right? So go ahead, go in there. It's all right.
This is where you're supposed to go for.
All right, so you wander into one of the stalls, and you see, yeah. Right, so Atlas explained it better than I did. You find out that there's this drug called Atom going around, and Atom is a material that affects your genetic code, which gives you superpowers, much like the lightning you saw earlier being used. Right, so you start to learn a little bit more about the history and are given a little bit more freedom to explore and find out more about yourself. And, you learn that these splicers are, basically addicts of this drug called Atom, which really messes people up. Look how crazy he is. He just pistol whipped a little girl. But, like, who does that? So, afterwards, you see this Big Daddy, the thing that was stomping around you earlier, and he completely beats the shit out of this splicer. Like, absolutely relentlessly. He drills through his abdomen and smashes his head through plexiglass like it's styrofoam. Now, those of you who don't know, plexiglass is really strong, so the fact that this thing was able to break through it like it's nothing is completely horrific. And going off what I said before, sort of builds that emotional tension of not wanting to fight this thing, but knowing that you're eventually going to have to. Right. So, again, given a little more freedom now to explore and find out more about Rapture yourself. Oh dear. You got it? You can switch to your pistol with the scroll wheel. There you go.
No, it won't let me do it.
No? What do you mean? Oh dear. All right.
I have to use one and two.
All right. So continue through then. All right. So again, just giving you more exposure to what life is now like in Rapture, getting attacked by these drug addicts who want your atoms so they can splice up and gain superpowers and all sorts of crazy stuff like that.
Oh well.
Yeah, you can electrify the water.
Yeah, it's like
Don't do it while you're on it.
It's all right. We're on easy. We're not here to teach him how to play the game. We're here to analyze it. It's completely different, right? So yeah, Atlas, when he asked you to save his family, he said he wanted you to go to Neptune's bounty. As soon as you try to go there, it's immediately locked off and you have splicers sent after you. Right now, obviously, that could not be a coincidence. I mean, what are the odds that you could have just triggered some sort of like safety mechanism to have caused this? Right? It's just not. It's too coincidental for this to just have happened by chance. So again, don't get close to that. It gives you that incentive of mystery. Who just tried to stop you from going to Neptune's bounty? Who wants you to not rescue Atlas, the one friend you have down in this hellhole, from saving his family? Right? So splicers get sent after you, completely horrible. All right, yeah, just follow the waypoint arrow over there. There you go. All right, you could press Control to run, by the way. I think you're only going at walking speed. Oh, I should have brought a controller. This would have been a lot easier. Okay,
I think it's Control.
You have to take a long way to get to Neptune's bounty now, right? And just as you're about to progress to the next part of the game, you meet this handsome devil, Andrew Ryan, the guy who you saw in the video earlier. Right, so your very first experience with Andrew Ryan, the guy who created this whole city you're in, is that he thinks you're some kind of spy and immediately sends splicers after you to kill you. So, right off the bat, they're establishing him as an unlikable character. it creates that emotional incentive. You don't like this guy. You don't want to get killed by this huge jerk. That's as far as I wanted to go. If you could sit down now. Thank you very much, Foley, for coming tonight.
You didn't die once.
Oh.
You gonna go back again now?
I haven't actually.
Oh.
I've gotten up to that part, I think.
Okay.
But I still haven't played.
Again, are you sure you don't care about spoilers? 'Cause
No,
it's
it's
really
fine.
okay. I feel so bad ruining this for people, but anyway, let me. There we go. All right. So yeah, as I said before, the first experience you have with Andrew Ryan is that he's a huge jerk who's trying to kill you. So right off the bat, unlikable character. Giving you an incentive to want to defy this guy. Who does he think he is? Sending splicers after you, right? All you want to do is save Atlas's family and get out of there. Why is this jackass trying to keep you down here? It gives you incentive to want to complete your quest and save Atlas's family. Now, as I said before, Andrew Ryan, every time you talk to him, goes out of his way to make himself an unlikable character, and is responsible for every trouble you encounter in the game, right? And it gets, just kind of annoying at first, but there's one point in the game where he really starts to get close to home. So, and I'm sorry for the poor picture quality, I couldn't find a better screenshot of this, but you eventually, find Atlas's family, and he tells you that they're hiding in a bathysphere, right? And you have to go around and turn off some safety mechanisms that Ryan turned on to keep you from reaching them, right? And just as you're about to save Atlas's family and get everyone home, and it's going to be a big happy ending, he blows the bathysphere up, right? And again, so many emotions the player would be feeling at this point. You're angry or upset, but most importantly, everything that you've been working towards before this point has completely gone for naught, right? So all the incentive that was brought up and has been pushing the player to want to, save Atlas's family was all for nothing because he just murdered them right in front of you, right? But then, right there, starts a new incentive, okay? So after Andrew Ryan murders Atlas's family, you get angry. You want to go after this guy now because of what he did. And it creates a new goal that, okay, well, seeing as we can't save his family anymore, we need to kill Andrew Ryan to avenge them, right? That's the new incentive you're given. And again, even after this point, he's still a huge jerk to you and murders like every other NPC you encounter and is just the most unlikable person, right? So, again, I'm not going to tear through the entire story, even though I probably could with an alarming amount of accuracy. But eventually you arrive to Andrew Ryan, right? And this is the big turning point, right? This is finally the point where you can avenge Atlas's family and get everyone, just leave and get everyone home. Like, that was your whole incentive the whole time, to want to go after this horrible bastard, right? Now, you make it into his office, and you see this board up here. And you notice several people I've mentioned earlier, one of which is Frank Fontaine. And as I said before, Frank Fontaine... wait, did I explain the... Oh, I totally did I? Oh, I rehearsed this and got it wrong. All right, so... I apologize if I haven't already mentioned this, but the main dispute in BioShock was that there was this huge class war going on, and you find out as you progress through the game that people they couldn't just sort of come to Rapture at their own leisure; they had to be invited, right? And the sort of incentive to want to live in Rapture was that you would have a successful life and you would be someone really important here. And it really, made people be like, oh, wow, I have a really crappy life on the surface, but if I come down here, I could be like a big shot and, feel important and all that. But when people came down here, they realized that, oh, I have crappy jobs down here too. And that upset a lot of people, right? I should probably backtrack from that really quick. Okay, so there was this guy who rose to power, Frank Fontaine, and he was sort of a hero of the people. He really thought that, it was kind of bullshit that people had to have crappy jobs down in Rapture, even though the whole reason they came down here in the first place was to avoid having a crappy job, right? So Frank Fontaine, sort of a hero of the people, but unfortunately he was killed by Andrew Ryan, which again just started this huge war among the people, among high society and low society, and they're all going at it, and they're using this tonic, these plasmids to give themselves superpowers, and it basically is what turned Rapture into what it is today. Why, the only remaining folks of Rapture are, spliced up mutants. So you find that out over. I apologize. You find that out over the period of the game, and generally just get a history of what happens. And just as you're about to murder Andrew Ryan, you come across this poster right here, right? Now, you don't know it at the time, but this guy right here is supposed to be you. And, you think, this is a little weird. Why am I being connected by red yarn to Frank Fontaine and to Andrew Ryan and to Jasmine Jolene, who is a side character? You learn a little bit more about her. It's irrelevant to this presentation. But, it's, again, just, even though you have all these questions answered for you, it gives another mystery. What is my connection with these guys? And then you see the phrase, "Would you kindly?" And at the time, you don't really think a lot about it, right? So you continue through this part of the level, finally making it to Andrew Ryan. Now, right off the bat, when you meet this guy, you know that something is off. Because the entire game prior to this point, Andrew Ryan has been trying to kill you. He's been trying to send splicers after you or to, lock you off in certain parts of Rapture. He's always been out to get you. And now that you're finally kicking down the door in his office, he's playing golf and is completely relaxed. So, you learn, well, what's going on? Why does he do that? And what he explains to you is completely crazy. So, as you know, right from the beginning, Jack is someone that you know almost nothing about, right? You never hear anything about him. He never talks to anyone. He is essentially Gordon Freeman, the silent protagonist. He never, reveals anything about him. No one seems to know anything about him. And this is the point where you finally get an explanation which just blows you away. So, Andrew Ryan goes on to explain that you are actually genetically modified to respond to the phrase, "Would you kindly?" Which, if as he explains, is a phrase that Atlas has been using a lot. Throughout the course of the game, he'll ask you to perform certain tasks like, "Oh, would you kindly find a crowbar," or something like that. "Would you kindly leg it on over to the bathysphere?" "Would you kindly head over to Andrew Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?" Right? So that's my Atlas impression, by the way. Immediate betrayal from the one person you thought you could trust in the entire game is revealed to actually have been using you to assassinate Andrew Ryan, right? But this seems a little weird. Atlas wanted to kill Andrew Ryan for murdering his family. Why would he, be using you the entire time from the beginning? That doesn't make any sense. And this is the point when you find out that Frank Fontaine, this hero of the people, was not killed by Andrew Ryan, but instead went under this alias of Atlas to sort of go into hiding and lead Andrew Ryan off his trail. And Atlas reveals himself, and he explains that he's really upset that you had to get involved in this, and actually a little nicer than Andrew Ryan. But at the same time, you feel hurt. You feel betrayed. You're like, oh my God, this is the one guy I thought I could trust down here. And it turns out to completely not be the case. But even though, you think that this is the point where he would end and Fontaine gets what he wants, that's not the end of the game, right? Instead, it creates a new incentive through the narrative. Like, You just went through so much trouble to go and murder Andrew Ryan. Now you need to kill Fontaine. Because what else are you going to do? You can't just run. You can't just leave and let him have what he wants after he hurt and betrayed and used you, throughout the entire course of the game from the very beginning. You want revenge. You want to go after him. So, surely enough, you go after Frank Fontaine. And I think that's the next slide, right? So, as you communicate with Fontaine, you find out that he actually starts using plasmids and starts to slowly go insane and turns into this giant hulking monstrosity. And obviously a little off-putting. I mean, he's a freaking giant now and looks a lot like those statues you've been seeing earlier of the muscular dudes who are holding up parts of Rapture. And still though, you are angry, you're upset, you hate this guy, you want to murder him, and you're pushed to, go through a boss fight with this giant, even though you might be a little off-put otherwise, right? So, you fight Fontaine, you are able to leave Rapture, and, everything is either good or bad. But still, even after the game is ended, and has used all sorts of different incentives to push you through it, it doesn't quite end there. So, throughout the game, you interact a lot with the Little Sisters mentioned earlier. Now, the Little Sisters, they carry a lot of Adam on them, right? And throughout the game, you are able to decide whether or not you want to either harvest the Little Sisters, which would kill them, but you gain more Adam, or rescue them, which you would gain less Adam for items, but or plasmids rather, and in turn get rewarded for it later, right? And this is a screenshot from BioShock 2. I don't have a screenshot from the first one, but depending on whether or not you either saved or harvested the Little Sisters, depending on what ending you got. So there was either a good one where he escapes with the Little Sisters and lives a happy life and watches them all grow up and be successful, or a bad one where Jack himself becomes a splicer and takes a bunch of splicers up to the surface and just starts murdering people, right? So even after the game is ended, it gives you incentive to go back and want to play it again, because once you got one ending, well, you want to go back and get the other, find out what happens and see how the gameplay is affected after you go through it a second time and make different decisions, either saving or rescuing or harvesting the Little Sisters from before. So that's all I got. I'm gonna open it up to Q&A right now if everyone looks kind of bored. So, does anyone have any questions at all you would like to run by me? Hi, Parker. What's up?
Mine's more of just the comments. I love how you broke down BioShock incentives, but maybe compress your presentation into a single portion of the game, because essentially you just went through the entire plot of BioShock for the last hour, right? Explaining, I felt like you could have focused on maybe just one section of level, maybe the hospital portion, explaining that instead of the entire game, which kind of, no offense, got a little dull at some points, would be.
It's going all right.
Explaining
Where's the hospital?
I agree to an extent, but I thought it would be a lot more effective to sort of talk about the incentive that the design narrative pushes you through and wants to experiment more. So I do know that I got a little long-winded there, but it was all
excited.
Yeah, a little bit. I got a little excited for it. I adore this game, so I do see where you're coming from, though. I just thought that it would be better to approach the overall story, which unfortunately can't really be talked about without a good amount of explaining. But I do see your point. Thank you for bringing that up. Max, I see your hand up.
It's just another comment about when you had Bully up playing. You railroaded him a lot, so much so that it almost didn't seem like you really wanted a player to be playing as much as you could have just used the video. If you have a player, you should really just allow them to do whatever they want in the game and not really approach them or talk directly to them at kind of point of interest.
I was aware I did, and I apologize for that, by the way, fully. But there were just certain points I wanted to take, and as Parker brought up, I didn't want to take up too much time, so I sort of just wanted to bring the points up as they came. So maybe not entirely necessary to have the game itself. My thought process anyway was just that it would be more effective to have someone up playing it live rather than just having a video to show. But thank you otherwise. Yes.
As far as incentive go, those, were you saying that's the main incentive? Because you're forgetting about players that just love to upgrade themselves in game.
That is an incentive, and
like a lot of different ways you can upgrade your character, and I feel like that's a main part of the gameplay as well.
I do acknowledge that, and I believe I did mention earlier that there are so many different incentives, two of which boil down to having fun and satisfaction, which would go into that with the mechanics. I just wanted to focus a little bit more on the story behind it because I thought that was a lot more interesting, in my opinion, anyway, and worth talking about, even again if it was a little long-winded. Foley, what's up?
Overall, I thought it was good. I was kind of confused at where you were going with it for a while, just because you started talking about it, you were very excited, which was good. But you got into talking about the story and then some of the incentives, and then you had me play the game. So I didn't know kind of where you're going with that, as in, are you now getting off narrative because you were mainly focused on that for most of your talk before I started playing, and then you got me to start playing, so I didn't know if you were transferring over to level design and how the worlds play out. But you did just keep explaining narrative and how the incentives actually are brought out in the level design, and I thought that was done well. It was just a little confusing for me where you were going with it half the time, but when you kept coming back to narrative, and I think that was your main focus. I think you really expressed how much the narrative plays through the game and incentivized the player.
Exactly. I know it might be a little overwhelming your first time playing through it, but I feel that one of the strongest points of design in BioShock is that the setting itself is sort of explaining the narrative, which is what I tried to emphasize, that the more you explore and the more exposure you get to Rapture, you learn more about it through that rather than directly hearing about it through audio messages or something like that. And that's sort of what I was trying to emphasize. But thank you for your feedback, Foley. Mark, I see your hand up.
I remember early in the presentation while Foley was playing that you didn't like the diaries and the codexes.
The reason I said that is because in so many different games, particularly of the sandbox genre, whenever they want to explain a setting or the story behind it, usually one of the more popular ones I always see are either a long cutscene that tells like a whole story, or you find diaries around. And one game that comes into particular is the Elder Scrolls series. Now, when you do quests in the Elder Scrolls and you want to find more out about a quest or or something of that regard, you usually find a diary entry of someone who has kept log of what was taking place during this quest and either what went right or what went wrong. And I'm not really a big fan of that because a lot of games do that, and it's really boring to like always have to find some sort of diary to read and have explained to you what's taking place. In this context, however, I feel like well, it is optional, but the thing about what BioShock does that I feel is really well is even though it's kind of unlikely that so many people would be using audio diaries like that, I feel that actually using voice clips and in some audio messages you hear like background noises of like fights going on and stuff like that. I feel that really is a lot more atmospheric than just reading a diary entry. And BioShock, again, pulls this off kind of well by not making them so infrequent that they have to pull you out of the action to stop and read this. Which, again, it doesn't even do that, because while you're listening, you could still, like, progress through the level and still murder splicers and stuff like that.
So then you have no qualms about how BioShock implements their codex by through like audio diaries.
Well, I think that, it sort of breaks the immersion a little bit, because, having a diary isn't really something that a lot of people do, and, not a lot of people record their thoughts, and it's sort of just kind of weird to imagine that so many citizens of Rapture have actually been using audio diaries, and even more so that they would be perfectly preserved after this horrible war, and that kind of takes away the immersion a bit, but it just, like, keeps the action going long enough where you don't really think about it, at least through your first experience playing through it.
What would you do instead?
Well, that's kind of the thing. That's why I can't entirely blame BioShock for explaining the plot through audio diaries, because there's not really much other of an option. But as you saw before, the effects of using Adam actually has players hallucinate ghosts, and these ghosts are sort of memories of events that have happened in BioShock in the past, or in Rapture in the past, rather. Excuse me. And I feel like that could have been utilized to explain the story a little bit more coherently, rather than directly finding out about it through the audio logs.
That would have been really cool. Because like when we saw the ghost flashback, I forgot that even happens. It happens so infrequently.
Exactly. And even then, you usually don't get context when you see one of these Adam ghosts floating about. They usually are having some sort of like conversation in themselves, and the one we saw was just freaking out about how she wasn't pretty because she became mutated from using Adam. So it's like, well, okay, so we already know that it mutates people, and that's just sort of like an emphasis on someone's reaction to it. And I feel like that could have been used a little better to explain the story rather than audio logs. Repeating myself, but yeah, that's what I would take on
I
that.
agree. Metro does that pretty well.
Metro does that amazingly. I agree, and I don't want to get into Metro because we're going to be up here like another hour talking about how great Metro is. So play Metro, everyone. 2033, great game. Max, I see your hand up. Oh no, okay. Nick, I see your hand up.
Wouldn't you have to go back and explain why you see ghosts?
That is explained later in the game. It's a side effect from frequent Adam usage that you see these ghosts. I don't think they ever directly explain why these are like series of events that actually happened, but it's just sort of like taking part on your mentality, because obviously you see that everyone who uses tonics and plasmids go completely crazy, and part of that might be hallucinations. So that's why you're seeing it. But I can't unfortunately recall off the top of my head why you actually see series of events that happened. But that's why it happens. It's the Adam.
Well, going back to audio logs, I mean, you do see like the narrative on the walls within like the posters and what's written. You can kind of get a feel for what's going on.
Exactly, and that's what I said with Foley's comment earlier, is that I know, but again, it just sort of maybe this isn't a universal feeling. This is more for me personally. I was really taken out by having to find diary entries rather than actually just being able to see for myself and learn from that. Having to have
you had to, right?
I did, yeah, and I don't know. I just felt that it kind of killed the mood a bit to have to stop and have to have what's taking place explained to me. But again, it's more just exactly. But it's still an incentive to want to find out more about Rapture. So while it wasn't necessarily a requirement to find the audio messages, you still, if you wanted to find out more about the history of Rapture, it kind of you had to if you wanted to do that. So it wasn't strictly necessary for completion of the game, but.
So how did it take you out then if you wanted to know more?
Well, I just feel that it could have gone about explaining the history of Rapture better than through audio logs. That's my only complaint. Like, I collected them, yeah, just so I could find out more. And I know I'm kind of contradicting myself a bit, but
That's all.
No, I think that makes sense. Like, you want to learn more about the world, but you want to be playing and finding out, right?
So you're saying it just wasn't in the way you wanted to learn about it?
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's why I'm mumbling up here, trying to explain to everyone. Pretty much.
Would you say that, like, I mean, if somebody just, they were like really excited running through and they didn't even bother to collect any of the audio logs, but they did like the story, do you think they would still get a good sense of that?
For the most part, yeah, but there are some subjects that aren't really touched on as much as they should be. At least, again, in my opinion, anyway. Like, I remember one of the problems I had through playing my first time playing BioShock was I didn't really have a very good idea of who Frank Fontaine was. I mean, they mentioned him a few times in the main story, yeah, but you really only learn more about who he was and what he did through the audio messages, and that kind of took me out of it because I sort of reluctantly collected these, and even still, like when Atlas revealed himself to be Frank Fontaine, it's like, well, okay. Why is that important? Like, I was just a little confused by that. So, going back, obviously I have a thorough understanding of BioShock now, but, yeah, first time going through it, a little disappointed by that. Anyone else?
I have one last question.
What's that?
Oh, and by the way, Susan O'Connor was one of the writers. Ken Levine was, from what I understand, he put the script together for the story, but then she came in and did a lot of extra writing, maybe audio logs and stuff like that.
Maybe.
But the question was, would you kindly? Do you feel it was used enough within the game that it had that aha moment?
The plot twist was amazing because it actually got the player involved in it, right? It wasn't really a case of Jack being controlled by the phrase "would you kindly." It was more like you were being controlled by the phrase "would you kindly," because as you know, the trope for the silent protagonist is sort of to put the player in the shoes of the character you play as much as possible, right? The less dialogue and the less they reveal about themselves, the more you can sort of create the illusion that this is you traveling through Rapture rather than Jack traveling through Rapture. And you never really think about "would you kindly" initially. I mean, you just sort of figure that Atlas is just being polite. It's like saying, "Oh, would you please do this for me?" And you don't really think a lot about it, but when you find out right at the end that he was actually using that to control you the whole time, it really blew you away because, it was like you were being controlled by the phrase "would you kindly," and that's what makes it so jarring, exactly. And that I feel was completely ingenious of BioShock, and I wish I could replicate that in any of my projects ever in my life. That would just be amazing. I see your hand, Max. Hi. What do you want?
Just a comment about something I know about BioShock writing. Atlas, I think in testing, didn't have an accent.
Really?
But people found "would you kindly" an odd phrase in an American accent because nobody in America says that phrase.
Oh,
So
boy, that's
Gave Atlas an accent and masked it because he thought it was part of this.
So it would have been too obvious, maybe, otherwise?
And I feel like, making Atlas like this, this nice little Irish boy, makes him a lot more likable of a character, usually, at least in video games, British or Irish accents aren't really associated with villainy, they're just sort of like, oh, he's, just a family guy who wants to get out of here. And it never makes you question for a second about Atlas's motives, even though you never find out about him. At least not directly. He never talks about himself, so you never really find out anything about him.
By the way, you touched on this symbolism that you didn't even realize. You said at the very end, Atlas looked like those statues you see of the guy holding up the world. That's a statue of Atlas. That's in Greek mythology.
Yeah, he was the Titan that was, I believe he was banished by Zeus to carry the world, is that right?
Something like that. But yeah, just everything's clicking.
If you play God of War.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I learned my mythology from God of War.
Yeah, me too, unfortunately. But, that is really good symbolism. But, touching on that, I'm trying to talk more about the reasons why the player would want to progress and less the design behind it. But I do love the thought that was put into this game is completely astounding, which, Foley, that's why I feel so bad that I ruined it for you. And I really wish I asked you to step outside or something like that. But
maybe now you'll be more interested in finishing it.
I started a while back, but I only went through pretty much the walkthrough level like you
It-
just gave me, but I haven't had time.
Is there any reason for that in particular? Were you not interested in it, or were
I
you?
haven't had time to
Oh,
immerse myself in it, and I just hear that it's an amazing story, and I'd rather just get the story out of it right now since there's 3 of them, and focus on the story aspect and the gameplay part, just because I don't have the time for it.
well, again, what I gave was a very brief synopsis, and at the very least, you should, if not play it, definitely just go on like the BioShock wiki and read like the whole plot laid out, because it's an amazingly well told story. And I forgot what I was going to say.
With 2 stuff.
I actually really liked 2. A lot of people hate on 2. I thought it was really good.
2 is another studio, right?
I'm pretty sure it was the same studio, actually.
No,
BioShock Infinite was a different studio. Oh, was it?
BioShock
No,
Infinite was the same studio.
BioShock 2 was a different
BioShock
studio.
2 was.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah, this is an entirely different argument, but I actually really liked BioShock 2. People call it like kind of an unnecessary sequel, but I never really thought of that as a very good argument, because when you think about it, every sequel that has ever been created for anything has been unnecessary. So you like the Star Wars sequels were unnecessary. Back to the Futures 2 and 3, those were unnecessary. Every Assassin's Creed past the first one, unnecessary. But saying that, it doesn't mean anything because they're all unnecessary. So I don't really understand that argument. That's one I hear a lot anyway. I'm gonna be up here forever if I try to defend BioShock 2. Are there any other questions, anyone?
So that sort of writing style is sort of unique in that it's just all build up and then it's just a crescendo of like plot just brought up
Exactly.
and it makes it very exciting. It makes them think back to the beginning, so it makes them even more involved as to why they're there. Does that in BioShock 1, and you also see that in BioShock Infinite. It brings the player back to the beginning and makes them think. Now, is that sort of what you're starting to see in other games, or is this the only sort of franchise where you see this sort of writing?
Well, the thing about BioShock is that when it first came out, it was really an experimental game for this time. This was a really risky game to make because, completely differentiated from the norm, introduced all sorts of different mechanics that are completely, outside the box for first-person shooters, and they were taking a lot of risks for that. Even with the premise of writing, having an ending that ties in with everything that you've encountered with the beginning is really hard to pull off, and again, very risky, because if you don't do it right, then you're just going to, get poor sales and get laughed at. So
It feels like a gimmick.
yeah, I feel like BioShock has become a franchise that has sort of become aware that there's always some sort of ending that ties in with everything you've done before, and I sort of feel that that's sort of one of the selling points, honestly, is that there's always been some sort of ending that brings it all together and makes you reevaluate everything you've done before. So no, to answer your question, I don't think a lot of games do that, and I think that's very unique for BioShock and one of the greatest strengths about it.
Isn't BioShock the spiritual successor of System Shock?
It is, yes. In fact, it's almost to the point where it's basically a modern-day direct remake of it. System Shock is it introduces the exact same mechanics of switching between weapons and superpowers that you get. I don't recall what they're called off the top of my head, but it has a ending that ties everything together. You get betrayed by one of the NPCs. Again, I'm not really entirely sure of the specifics, but I am aware that this happens. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of inspiration that has come from System Shock that has been put into BioShock, which again sort of goes back to what I said before. System Shock as well was a very risky game for its time, and maybe the fact that it's lesser known than its spiritual successor BioShock sort of reflects that even though it was very experimental and it was really trying something different, it still isn't that well known. So I sort of see that as a bit of a reflection. But yes, it is a spiritual successor is what I'm trying to get to. Anyone else? I don't want to chew up too much of Ian's time.
I'm not going in yet.
Oh, no?
He
Alright,
already
so,
is on time.
Oh,
It's
I'm
10:30. Yeah, we're down to the last 20 minutes. So from here, I
Oh
guess
Jesus, did I really take that long? I'm so
That's
sorry.
we'll continue the boring math stuff next time.
I'm sorry, Ian.
No,
I didn't
no,
mean to take this from you.
That's great. So thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, God, I feel really awkward now. That took up so much time.
And I guess for the rest of the last 20 minutes or so, I'll just walk around and check in with each of the groups, and you guys can start thinking things through if anyone has questions.
Was that
Let me
seriously an
know.
hour and a half? I think keeping track.
Well, we started like 'cause I came in late.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Can I